I remember the moment my life ended. Not with a car crash. Not with a scream. Just a quiet knock on a hospital door, followed by a clipboard, a signature, and a decision I didn't really understand but couldn't take back. My name, well, it used to be Daniel. Everyone called me Danny. I was 22 when it happened. The surgery. The experiment, they called it. They told me it was about nerve rerouting, helping paraplegics regain function.
Cutting edge, they said.
But no one said it would change who I was, or at least who I thought I was. Let me start at the beginning. Because this story, it's not just about a surgeon's scalpel. It's about betrayal. About secrets. About how identity isn't just something you're born with. It can be taken, reshaped, or even stolen when you're vulnerable enough. I was born in a small town in Ohio. My father was a retired Marine. My mother, a quiet woman who looked like she'd been waiting to escape her life for decades. I was their only child. Growing up, I always felt off. Not in a way I could name. Just this nagging discomfort in my own skin, especially during adolescence. I used to sneak into my mom's room. Not for anything perverted. I just wanted to try her scarves. Her makeup.
I didn't even know why.
I'd stare in the mirror and whisper, maybe I'm not supposed to be Danny. But then I'd punch the wall and call myself names. I thought I was sick, broken, twisted. My father once caught me wearing my mom's lipstick when I was 12. He didn't speak for a week. Then he took me out back, handed me a BB gun and said, "Real men fix what's wrong with them." I nodded. I didn't cry. I swallowed the shame and wore it like armor. Fast forward to college. I dropped out after 2 semesters. Too many thoughts. Too many nightmares. I started drinking.
Heavily.
It dulled the voice in my head, the one that kept saying, "You're living a lie." One night, I blacked out after mixing pills and vodka. Woke up in a hospital bed. They said I had nearly died. I wish I had. A man in a lab coat visited me. He introduced himself as Dr. Lynford. Said he was part of a government-funded research group on identity-linked neurological rewiring. I didn't understand a word, but he said he could help me. "You feel disconnected from yourself, don't you?" he asked. I stared at him. He smiled like he already knew. Then he said something that still gives me chills. "What if I told you you're not broken, Danny? Your brain just needs to be shown who you really are." The next 2 weeks were a blur. Therapy sessions. Blood tests, scans, and then signatures. I remember signing a consent form, but I didn't read it. I just wanted the pain to stop. The surgery wasn't advertised as gender-affirming. They called it neurological mapping. But when I woke up, something was different. The way I moved, the way I looked at myself, the way I felt. I stayed at the hospital for 2 months. My body began changing, subtly at first. My skin softened. My voice began to rise. Breasts started to form. I was terrified. Asked Dr. Lynford what was happening. He told me, "It's working. Your brain is aligning with your body." "But I never asked for this," I said. "You did," he replied. "You just didn't know how to say it." I screamed. I cried. But inside, something else was happening. A quiet relief. Like a fog lifting. My name became Daniella. No one asked. It just showed up on my hospital chart one day. The nurses started calling me she. I didn't correct them. I couldn't. The changes weren't just physical. My memories began to shift. I remembered childhood moments I'd suppressed wearing my mom's dresses, praying to wake up as someone else. Were those memories real? Or were they implanted? I was discharged 6 months later. Different.
Completely.
When I went back home, my father slammed the door in my face. Said I was a freak of science. I slept in my car for 3 weeks. Then my mother called. She asked to meet. We sat at a diner. She looked thinner, older, but her eyes were kind. Then she said the words that changed everything. I knew this would happen. I tried to warn them. I stared at her, heart pounding. What do you mean? She pulled out an old envelope. Inside were ultrasound pictures of 2 fetuses. You were a twin, she said. Your sister, she didn't make it. At least, that's what they told me. I couldn't breathe. They said she absorbed into you, that it happens sometimes. But the doctors, they warned it could affect your development. She paused. They said you might feel both. I felt my entire body go cold. Then I remembered something. When I was 5, I used to draw 2 kids. One with short hair, one with long. I used to call them me. It wasn't a phase. It was a truth buried so deep even I forgot it. I confronted Dr. Lynford later. Demanded answers. He smiled, calm as ever. You're the first successful integration, he said. What the hell does that mean? 2 identities. 1 body. We simply let the other rise. I wanted to punch him. Instead, I walked out. No lawsuits. No headlines. No one would believe me anyway. Now, it's been 3 years. I live in Seattle. I work at a bookstore.
People know me as Danny.
Some days I feel whole. Other days, like I'm just playing a part in someone else's dream. I still hear Danny's voice in my head, but softer now, like an old friend watching from a distance. Sometimes, I wonder, was this really my choice? Or was I rewritten by a stranger in a white coat? But then I look in the mirror, and I see her. Not a science project. Not a mistake, just me. And for the first time in my life, I don't want to disappear. Even if I'll never truly understand how I got here. Even if the world calls it an experiment. Even if my story sounds too strange to be real, this is who I am. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. But even after I said those words, maybe that's enough, something inside me wasn't done speaking. Because there were still nights I woke up drenched in sweat, confused, shaking, hearing Danny scream from somewhere deep inside me, like a memory echoing through a body that no longer belonged to him.
To me.
I stopped going out after dark. I avoided mirrors when I could. Not because I hated the way I looked, but because the reflection made me question if I had ever been real to begin with. One evening, I was shelving books at work when a customer tapped my shoulder. He was in his 40s, neatly dressed, but his hands trembled as he handed me a note. No words, just a name I hadn't heard in years. Dr. Howard Lynford, deceased. I froze. He looked at me with tired, bloodshot eyes. You were one of them, weren't you? He whispered. I didn't respond. He handed me a second piece of paper. An address. You need to see it. You deserve to know the full truth. I should have thrown it away. Burned it. But something pulled at me. Some hollow place inside that still ached for answers. The address led me to an abandoned lab 2 towns over. I broke in. The air reeked of mold and chemicals. Dust lay thick over monitors and faded documents. But in a back room, I found the files. Rows and rows of them. Redacted pages. Test subjects. Only a few names weren't crossed out. Mine was one of them. Subject 017. Dual Identity Reconciliation Trial. Next to it, outcome. Functional. Stable. Future viability promising. Then something else, something handwritten. Possible genetic anomaly. Vanishing twin theory confirmed. Will require long-term observation. C. Maternal Records, Ohio 1996. My hands shook so badly, I nearly dropped the folder. But that wasn't the worst part. On the final page, scrawled in ink. Subject unaware of full emotional risk. Personality split may reemerge. Must monitor for disassociation. I felt like vomiting. So it hadn't been over. The surgery wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a second experiment, one they never told me about. I was never just a patient. I was a subject. A trial run. A test. That night, I went home and stared at my old photo albums. All those birthday parties. Family trips. Smiling pictures of me of Danny. But now when I looked, I saw someone lost in those eyes. Like the body never matched the soul. The next few weeks passed in a daze. I barely ate. Barely slept. I started hearing things again. Not voices. Just echoes. My reflection talking back when I didn't move. Fleeting flashes of myself in clothes I hadn't worn in years. Old memories folding into new ones until I couldn't tell where Danny ended and Danny began. I saw a therapist. She didn't flinch when I told her. She didn't accuse me of being crazy. Instead, she said, "You were never allowed to choose." And that grief of what could have been is very real. That night, I cried for 5 hours straight. I didn't even know what I was mourning. The boy I used to be? The girl I had become? Or the version of me that never got the chance to grow without being dissected? Weeks passed. I started writing. Journals. Letters. Some addressed to Danny. Some to the twin I'd never met. In one of them, I wrote, "Maybe we were always both. Maybe we weren't meant to be split. I don't know who I am some days. But I know I am real. And for now, that has to be enough." Still, one question haunts me when I lie in bed at night, staring at the ceiling. What if this wasn't the only experiment? What if there are others walking around right now, just like me, living someone else's design, feeling something they can't name, not broken, not sick, just rewritten, and never told why? A few days after that thought anchored itself in my chest, I did something I hadn't done in years. I logged onto an old online forum I used to visit in college. It was a space for people who felt displaced, disconnected from their gender, their bodies, their memories. Back then, I was just a silent observer. Now I posted something I never thought I'd have the courage to write. Has anyone else ever felt like their identity was changed, not discovered? Within an hour, I had 5 replies. By morning, dozens. Stories poured in, some just confusion, others eerily similar to mine. People who woke up one day and no longer felt aligned with the person they'd always known themselves to be. A girl in New Mexico who remembered being called by a different name as a child, but her parents denied it. A man in Florida who swore he once looked different in the mirror, more feminine, but no one else remembered. One story mentioned Dr. Lynford by name. That was the thread that changed everything. I messaged the user privately.
Her name was May.
She was 27. She used to be Mason. When I read her first message, I dropped my phone. Because it started like mine. I was hospitalized after a breakdown. They said I volunteered for a stabilization treatment. I don't remember much, just flashes. When I woke up, I wasn't the same. We talked for hours. We compared our notes, our memories, our missing pieces. And then she said something I'll never forget. I used to dream about a twin. A girl who looked like me, but wasn't me. I think she's the one they brought forward. Chills crawled down my spine. Because in one of my journals I had written, I don't know if I became her, or if she was always waiting to live. Was this real? Were they selecting people with subconscious fractures, twin remnants, disassociated identities? Were we experiments in unlocking something no one fully understood? May and I decided to meet in person. We picked a neutral place, a quiet cafe near Chicago. I don't know what I expected. But when I saw her, it was like staring into a mirror that reflected the pieces I'd lost. Her posture, her eyes, the way she scanned the room as if searching for someone who used to exist. We talked for 6 hours. No breaks, no lies, no walls. She told me about a folder she found in her stepfather's attic. It had her birth certificate, 2 different names, and a photo she swore wasn't her, but looked exactly like her. That's when it hit me. These weren't random experiments. They were targeted, chosen, and someone was still watching. I started receiving letters in the mail. No return address. No stamps. Just folded pages slipped through the crack in my apartment door. The first one said, "Curiosity can be dangerous. You're still being observed." The second, "You weren't the first.
You won't be the last.
Stop digging." I told May. She was already planning to move. I didn't blame her, but I couldn't stop. There's something about knowing your life was orchestrated that makes silence unbearable. I started researching medical trials under Lynford's name. Most were scrubbed. Some were buried under shell organizations. But a few had links to a pharmaceutical company called Aonx. When I searched deeper, I found a list of grants for behavioral identity synthesis and gendered neural restructuring. And next to one grant, Subject Cluster D, active. Seattle branch. That was me. That had to be me. I tried to contact the company. No response. So, I went there. I walked into their building like I belonged. Dressed in a blazer.
Calm.
Confident. Danny on the outside. Danny seething within. I made it past the lobby. Past security. Until a woman in a white coat stopped me. She didn't ask why I was there. She just said, "You shouldn't have come." Then she handed me a flash drive. Whispered, "We weren't supposed to feel anything." But I remember mine, too. Before I could ask what she meant, she was gone. Back in my apartment, I plugged it in. Encrypted files. Password protected. But one folder wasn't locked. It was labeled 017 Daniella Grant. That was my full name. Inside were logs, observations, psychological notes, surveillance screenshots. One note read, "Subject appears unaware of twin identity recall merging. Emotional instability managed through hormonal reinforcement. No external intervention required at this time." Another said, "Phase 3 successful. Subject exhibits gender-stable behavior with lingering emotional residue from suppressed identity." I scrolled, hand over mouth, tears stinging my eyes. They were still watching, still studying me. Even now, even as I tried to move on, even as I tried to become real. I wanted to throw the laptop against the wall.
Scream.
Burn every piece of clothing I owned. Shave my head. Start over. But I didn't. Instead, I started writing this. Not as closure. Not for answers. But because somewhere out there there's someone else who feels like their life was hijacked. Someone who wakes up and doesn't know if the skin they're in was always meant to be theirs. Someone who wonders if they were made instead of born. To you, if you're out there, you're not alone. And you're not broken. They may have changed your reflection, but they didn't erase your soul. And maybe that's the part they'll never understand. Even in their labs, even with all their data, they can't control what's human. And whatever I am now, whoever I was before, I am still human.
And this is my story.
Even if it was written by someone else. 3 nights passed. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw pages of that file burned into my mind. Surveillance logs. Psychological codes. A name I no longer chose, but that someone else had given me. I kept thinking about the woman who gave me the flash drive. She had said, "We weren't supposed to feel anything." But I remember mine, too.
Hers.
Her what? Her past self? Her erased identity? I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd met her before.
So I went back.
But the building was empty. Vacated. Gutted. Like it had been abandoned for months.
The front door chained.
Windows blacked out. As if the entire operation had never existed. But I knew it had. And I wasn't the only one. May called me 2 days later. Her voice was quiet. Measured. She told me she had received a letter. Handwritten. No return address. Inside was a photograph. It showed 2 children twins. A boy and a girl. Sitting on a grassy lawn. Holding hands. On the back, in pencil. Subject pair 008. Pre-divergence. May was shaking. "Danny," she said, "I think we were chosen before we were even born." Something cracked open inside me. We weren't just patients. We weren't even just twins. We were part of something older. Something organized. Systematic. Children selected.
Split.
Observed. What if that vanishing twin theory wasn't just a medical anomaly? What if it was induced?
Forced.
Engineered. I remembered my mother's haunted eyes the day she told me. I tried to warn them.
Who was them?
I called her that night. I asked, "Mom, did you ever meet Dr. Lynford before I was in the hospital?" Silence. Then softly, "Yes.
Once.
Before you were born." My chest tightened. He came to a prenatal group I was part of. Said he was researching prenatal development and twin loss. He told me my pregnancy was special, that you might be different. My knees gave out. I sank to the floor. Phone clutched to my ear. "Why didn't you tell me?" She didn't answer for a long time. Finally, she said, "Because I didn't know what they did." I didn't know they'd come for you again. Again. They had planned this before I had even taken my first breath. They knew. They had watched me grow, tracked every misstep, every question I had about my body, my identity, myself. And when I broke, they stepped in. They didn't help me. They activated me. Suddenly, every moment of confusion I'd had growing up felt less like natural identity exploration and more like triggered responses. But what hit hardest was this sickening thought. What if I never had a choice? What if everything, my reflection, my name, the softness of my voice wasn't discovery but programming? I started spiraling. I didn't leave my apartment. I covered all the mirrors. I began taping paper over the laptop's camera. Then one day, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and nearly screamed. It was the woman, the doctor, the one from Onyx. I opened the door, breath caught in my chest. She stepped in, hair wet from the rain. She held a worn leather notebook and placed it on my kitchen counter. I wasn't supposed to, she said, but you deserve to see it. I opened the book. Inside, pages of handwritten notes, field reports, photos, and at the center, Project Iden, experimental integration of dual embryonic neurology. There were names, dozens, some scratched out, some labeled success, some labeled terminated. Mine was in red ink, ongoing, resilient, deviating. My throat closed. Deviating. I whispered. The woman nodded slowly. You're showing signs of rejecting the programming. What happens if I do? She hesitated. Then they'll initiate reset. But I think you're too far gone. They can't rewrite what's already awakened. I stared at her. Tears streamed down my face. Why are you helping me? She took out a photo from her coat pocket. It showed a boy, 13, skinny, awkward smile, hair like mine. He was me, before they changed me. Her voice cracked. I don't even remember what they called me before. But I know I didn't choose who I became. And neither did you. We sat in silence.
Just two people rewritten.
She finally said, there's a group. Underground. Survivors. We've all been altered. Some worse than others. We're trying to gather the evidence before it's erased. My pulse quickened. My fingers curled into fists. Then let me help. She smiled, broken and tired. And for the first time in years, I felt purpose. Not as Danny.
Not as Danny.
Not as Subject 017. But as someone who finally knew the truth. And wasn't afraid to fight back. Even if the scars ran deeper than skin. Even if they tried again. Even if my identity was stolen, twisted, rebranded. I'm taking it back. Not because I want revenge, but because I deserve to know who I really am before they erase me for good. I joined the group. We called ourselves the Echoes. Not rebels. Not heroes. Just what remained after the voices in our heads had been silenced, rewritten, erased, and yet somehow still found a way to scream. There were 8 of us, each one with a different story. But all of us had one thing in common. We didn't know who we were supposed to be. One of them, Jonah, who used to go by Elise, had scars all over his arms. Not from self-harm. From operations. He said he remembered waking up with different fingerprints. Literally. They changed his identity down to the detail. Another, Adira, used to work for Onyx. She defected after finding a terminal of unreported cases, dozens, maybe hundreds, of children who'd been flagged before birth. Chosen. Like us. We met in basements. Empty cabins. Sometimes in encrypted Zoom calls, with our webcams covered. Every time someone new joined, they cried. Because for the first time, someone believed them. May was still with us. She'd become the heart of the group. She had an ability to look people in the eye and say, I see you, and actually mean it. She said it to me once. And I finally believed her. The woman who'd handed me the flash drive, we now knew her name was Dr. Kira Ellings. She was one of the original designers of the split protocol. She told us everything. They started it 30 years ago. The theory? That identity, especially gender identity, could be manipulated with precision if caught early enough. If the brain was pliable, say, in utero or under emotional collapse, identity could be reshaped, recoded. The vanishing twin theory was their way in. One identity lived. The other waited. So they harvested the ones who lingered. Children born whole, but haunted. We were never alone in the womb. And they made sure we'd never feel whole unless they intervened. Her voice trembled when she said, "You were never broken. They just convinced you that you were so they could fix something that didn't need fixing." That night, I didn't sleep. None of us did. Because we knew what came next. Aeon X hadn't disappeared. They just moved. To places deeper. Louder. Safer for them. Now, they weren't targeting broken adults. They were targeting children. They'd created a youth foundation, public, polished by press releases and staged testimonials. But beneath it, they were repeating everything, refining it. And this time, they weren't waiting for us to break. They were pushing us to. We had a decision. Go silent.
Fade.
Let them keep doing it. Or go loud. And risk everything. I won't lie. I was terrified. What if they came for us? What if they erased us again? What if they fractured us so completely this time that we wouldn't even remember we'd fought? I sat in front of my mirror that night, removed the paper I'd taped over it. I saw her.
Danny. Strong. Tired. Bruised.
But here. And I saw him, too.
Danny.
Not as a ghost, but as part of me. I whispered, "We didn't choose this. But we choose what we do now." We went public. A live-streamed broadcast. We had documents. Photos. Audio recordings. Names. We exposed the prenatal files. The twins. The surgeries. The failed subjects. It spread like wildfire. Some said we were lying. That we were mentally ill. That it was another conspiracy theory for the digital age. But others whispered. I thought I was the only one. I dreamed about a twin, too. My identity never felt like mine. And then came the real message. An email sent to every member of the Echoes. No signature. No trace. Just a line of text. You were never experiments. You were keys. And an attachment. A file labeled Phase 5 Release. We didn't know what it meant until people started disappearing. First Jonah. Then May. No bodies. No calls. Just gone. I screamed when May didn't answer. I tore the group chat apart. Messages unsent. Photos deleted. It was like she'd never existed. But she did. I knew she did. I still had a note she'd written me, tucked inside my wallet. No matter who they made us into, this version of me still loves this version of you. I carried that note everywhere now. Because I was next. I could feel it. I started forgetting things. Where I put my keys. My old address. My own handwriting. And then one morning, I woke up and looked into the mirror. And I didn't recognize myself. Not Danny. Not Danny. Just someone. Half here. Half unraveling. I'm writing this now because I'm scared I won't remember soon. They're erasing us. Not by bullets. Not by force. By fragmentation. By splitting us again. But this time, I'm fighting it. Even if I disappear. Even if my name dissolves. Someone will read this. Someone will know that we existed. That we were whole once. And even if we were created, even if they rewrote our story,
we lived.
And somewhere out there. So, do others. I knew it was happening when I forgot my mother's name. Not just her number or her voice, her name. The one she whispered to me when I was scared as a child. The one she cried through when I left home after the surgery.
Gone. Just like that.
Like someone had gently plucked it from my mind and folded it away forever. I stared at a photo of her, trying to feel something. And I did. But not connection. Not memory. Just grief. The kind you feel for someone you're sure you loved, but no longer remember why. That's when I knew they were finishing what they started. Not with scalpels. Not with wires or chemicals. But with silence. With gaps. Little holes in my timeline. Tiny erasures in my memory. until the shape of me started collapsing in on itself. I recorded voice memos to myself each morning.
Hi.
It's Danny. You live in Seattle. Your mom's name is Elaine. You used to be Danny. You're not crazy. This is real. I wrote things on the mirror in lipstick. I carved names into a notebook. But the words started to look foreign. And one morning, when I played back a recording, I didn't recognize my own voice. It was too soft, too precise, too clean, like it had been rehearsed, reconstructed. I ran to the bathroom, clutched the sides of the sink, looked into the mirror, and for a moment, just a second, I saw 3 versions of me staring back. The child,
The boy.
the woman. None of them blinked. None of them smiled. They just looked at me, waiting. I collapsed. I don't know how long I laid on that cold tile floor, but when I woke up, a note was pressed beneath my fingers. Not written in my hand. It simply read, "They can erase your name. They can erase your face. But they can't erase what you've left behind." And for the first time in days, I remembered May. Her voice. Her laugh. The way she tapped her pen when she thought. I remembered the note she left me. I opened it again and read it aloud. "No matter who they made us into, this version of me still loves this version of you."
And I cried.
Because if love could survive this, if memory of love could burn through the fog, then maybe so could I. So I did the only thing I had left. I told the world. I uploaded everything. The files, the documents, the photos, my voice memos, my journal, even the recordings of my breakdown. I released it all into the noise of the internet, praying it wouldn't be buried, wouldn't be forgotten. I titled the folder, "The Person I Almost Was." And then, I stopped fighting. I let go. Let the wave of forgetting come. I let the name Danny slip from my lips one last time. And Danny too. I stopped clinging to either of them. Because I finally understood. I wasn't either of them anymore. I was the ghost of both. The echo between the two. And maybe that's where my truth had always lived, not in one identity, but in the flicker between them. The next morning I woke up. My apartment felt unfamiliar. The voice in my head was quiet. My memories were dim. But on the table sat a single photo. 2 children hand in hand. Neither fully me. Both entirely me. I didn't remember where it came from. But I knew what it meant. I wasn't erased. I was rewritten again and again. But the ink never fully dried. Somewhere in me, the truth still breathes. And maybe one day, someone else will find it, read it,
See me.
not as Danny, not as Danny, but as whatever survived. And that is enough.